Hello and welcome to my latest video. So on this video we are featuring Charlie Mckeever, a tough contender from his time who mixed in really good company, scoring more than his fair share of good wins himself. So Charlie Mckeever, beginning with his main opponents, and he fought a lot of really good fighters. So he starts out on here with a 2-fight series with young Griffo, the great Australian featherweight, scoring 1 win and 1 draw, so going unbeaten against him. He then repeated that feat against former lightweight champion George Kid Levine, also fighting him on 2 occasions, scoring 1 win and 1 draw. And then he fought former world champion. He won up to a trilogy, but again suffered no defeats, scoring 2 wins, no loss and 1 draw. Now, one fighter who did defeat him, was former 2-time lineal welterweight champion Mysterious Billy Smith. Mckeever fought him on 4 occasions, scoring 1 win with 2 losses and 1 draw. He then scored a singular win over former champion Rube Burns before fighting former champion Eddie Connolly to a draw in a singular fight. Now, he did fight the Barbados Demon Joe Walcott in a singular fight. Walcott defeated Mckeever, and Mckeever 5 times tried to defeat Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, but sadly he lost all 5 fights. Jack O'Brien was just a fighter he could not beat. He also fought the dangerous Baltimore Demon young Peter Jackson in a singular fight, also suffering a defeat. Next up, former welterweight champion Honey Melody. Charlie Mckeever fought him on 2 occasions, suffering 2 defeats. He then fought former pound-for-pound rated Owen Ziegler in his biggest fight series so far, going through his main opponents, the 6-fight series. Mckeever scored 3 wins with 1 loss and 2 draws from those 6 fights. So again, fighting a very tough contender 6 times, only with that 1 defeat. He then 4 times defeat contender Wilmington Jack Daly, before also fighting former lightweight contender Jack Everhard, 2 occasions, scoring 1 win and 1 draw. And he's done that a few times on this slide. Young Griffo, Kid Levine, fighting them twice without defeats, getting a win and a draw. He then fights young Corbett the First, George Green, suffering a defeat. And he also fought former heavyweight contender Big Sandy Ferguson, fighting to a draw. So that is a tough first slide, You've got the fights there with Hall of Famers, young Griffo, Kid Levine, Mysterious Billy Smith, Barbados Walcott, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. He didn't win all these fights, but he's beaten young Griffo, he's beaten Kid Levine, Smith, Mysterious Billy Smith, Rube Burns, Ziegler. So he has also scored a lot of wins in there, and a number of those fighters he's beaten without losing to. Other fighters like Jack O'Brien, Walcott, young Peter Jackson, he thought he couldn't defeat on those occasions. But there's a first slide there, busy first slide, trilogies, the 6-fight series with Ziegler, there's a lot of fights on there. So going on to slide 2, he fights capable contender Charlie Johnson in a singular fight, scoring a win. He then fights another capable contender, Jack Bennett, 5 times, scoring 1 win with 3 losses and 1 draw. And he also defeats Jack Bonnet in a singular fight. So there's 43 fights rated there. Now, some people would say, well, he's got a lot of losses in there, and he does have a lot of losses, but what we have to remember is he's not an all-time great, He's not a fighter who's held in that high regard, but still he's mixed in very tough company. When you look at a Jamel Charlo, for example, now you look at his resume, he doesn't have as many fights as Mckeever. You look at the resume, you're picking 5 or 6 names, and then you'd like, right, what else is there? But with fighters like this, that's not the case, They fight a whole number of champion level fighters, now Hall of Fame level fighters, as well as all the contenders as well. They often mix in very tough company. Jamel Charlo, if he'd have fought this guy 3 times, and that middleweight champion 5 times, and this former welterweight champion 4 times, and he may have picked up more defeats than he actually has. It's one of the differences I always tell people. Careers are run very differently now than what they were then. Now TV companies, they always want titles on the line for marketing. They only have so many dates per year, whereas in this time, fight cities at old cards, there'd be loads of fights on them. Often fighters would travel, someone like Mckeever might travel with another fighter going from city to city, and he'd fight on the same cards because he's travelling with him. Very, very different circumstances. But a very tough career there, with more than a fair share of good wins himself, including wins over Hall of Famers that someone like Jermell Charlo does not have. So when we go on to the first of his slides, KOs and rounds boxed, Charlie Mckeever only scored 8 knockouts. He wasn't a massive puncher, and that is another thing I've always said to people. Yes, we excited and praised the big punchers, but in a fight that's, say, scheduled for 15 rounds or 20 rounds or 12 rounds, if Charlie Mckeever loses the first 7, he can't rely on his knockout power to get him out of trouble, whereas a George Foreman, a Shavers, a Deontay Wilder, they can be getting outboxed and behind on the cards and turn a fight with just one shot. They have that one-punch knockout power. Fighters like Charlie Mckeever couldn't do that. If he wanted to win a 15-round fight, he had to win it on the rounds. And some people say that's not more difficult, but I always say, well, how? A big puncher can lose 5 rounds, land one big shot in 6th round and ice his opponent, knock him out, scoring the win. Charlie Mckeever couldn't rely on that. He had to claw those rounds back. Okay, and if he's fighting a Hall of Fame level fighter, it's not that easy. So he scored 8 KOs, 6 in 3 rounds or less, and 1 in the first round. He never scored any KOs against champions or Hall of Famers. He scored 1 KO or stoppage over a pound-for-pounder, and of course, as a pre-rating, he had a fight at 0 over rated fighters. Now, Mckeever fought 621 professional career rounds. Yeah, big shout out to Clash Royale Pro 698 in the chat. Good to see you. He fought 0 title fight rounds. Charlie Mckeever, despite fighting all those now Hall of Fame level fighters, championship level fighters, never even got a title shot. Which is why I don't cry milk now when fighters don't automatically get given belts or title shots. He fought 222 rounds against champions, 146 rounds against Hall of Famers, and 242 rounds against pound-for-pound fighters. Mckeever, of course, fought no rounds against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters or ring champions. So going on to his slide against champions, Mckeever has 22 fights against champions, scoring 6 wins with 11 losses and 5 draws. The huge disparity there is courtesy of Philadelphia Jack O'Brien's 5 straight wins over him, although O'Brien's an all-time great, so no real disgrace there that a contender couldn't whip him, but that is the disparity right there. So he defeated 5 individual champions, Young Griffo, George Kid Levine, both in the Hall now, Matty Matthews, another Hauler, Mysterious Billy Smith, and Rube Ferns. He scored KOs or stoppage over none of those champions individually. And when we look at record against Hall of Famers, he had 14 fights against Hall of Famers. Someone like Jermell Charlo hasn't had 14 fights against top 10 rated fighters. Mckeever had a record of 3 wins, 8 losses and 3 draw. He defeated 3 Hall of Famers, the aforementioned Young Griffo, George Kid Levine and Mysterious Billy Smith, and of course scored 0 KOs against Hall of Famers individually. So on to the pound-for-pound slide. Mckeever's biggest tally. He had 26 fights against pound-for-pound fighters, with a record of 9 wins, 11 losses and 6 draws. So he defeated 6 individual pound-for-pound fighters. They were Owen Ziegler, Young Griffo, George Kid Levine, Matty Matthews, Mysterious Billy Smith and Rube Ferns, and he scored knockout over stoppage over one of them, and that was the aforementioned Owen Ziegler. So there is the main opponent breakdown, and the slides against champions, Hall of Famers, pound-for-pounders. Sometimes they're very similar, sometimes they're different. It depends on the fighter in his career who he fought. When you're covering certain fighters like Harry Greb, they fight fighters who were in the Hall, like Jeff Smith, Jerome Jeffords, who was never a champion, so you get differences there. Just depends on the career, really, who they fought. So going on to rated opponents, obviously, Charlie Mckeever, when we get into the 1930 to now era, where I'll cover fighters across all the eras right up to modern time, they'll have full rating information, but at the moment still a high number of fighters don't have that rating information, as they fought long before the ratings came around. So we have 0 fights against top 10 fighters, top 3 fighters or ring champions. Obviously those numbers would be radically different had ratings been around. Fighters like Billy Smith and Levine and Jack O'Brien, they would all have been ring champions in their time, top 10 rated, etc. So as would Barbados Joe Walcott, as would Matty Matthews. Other fighters like Jack Everhard, Owen Ziegler, they'd have all been top 10 contenders, so he would have had large numbers, but sadly I never go on hypothesis. Everything is factual down the line. So he defeated no rated fighters individually and scored knockouts over 0 rated fighters individually. So with Mckeever, okay, he also had no world title fights. He never had a proper world title fight, despite mixing in tough company, which is why, again, now fighters who get to number 1 and they've had, say, 15 fights and they've never beat anybody of note, they haven't even beat a top 10 contender, I never cry if they don't get a title shot, because here you have a fighter like Mckeever and many other fighters I'll highlight, who never ever even got a world title shot, and they have 50 fights, 80 fights, 100 fights, 150 fights. Fought many great fighters and never got a title shot, so I never cry milk over fighters complaining, oh well, I'm 20-0 and I ain't had a title shot yet. So no title fights, no title fight record, no defences or KOs, obviously no wins against rated opponents in title fights, and obviously no wins against champions, Hall of Famers and pounders in title fights. So when we go to the final slide, okay, titles won of course with no title fights. I will say he was never awarded a belt, because some fighters back in this time could be awarded belts, very, very rarely, unlike now where Amazon Drone, a fighter moves up a division and WBA, Coleman drop a WBA super belt on the lap saying, hey, you're a champion now. It happened very rarely in this time, but it did happen. But of course he was awarded no world titles, so he's held none. He's also never been lineal champion or undisputed champion. Who are you covering in the next live? Unknown. I'll just pick them as I go. I've got like 20 career videos ready. I'll just pick them as I go. I'm also getting other ones ready, so it's almost like a conveyor belt. I've got a, say, like a advent calendar of fighters' careers, and I'll pick number 17 this day, number 16 next day, then I'll do another video and refill 17. So I never pick them. I'll just pick it before I do it, kind of thing. It's just a bit more easy going that way, and therefore I don't have to stick to any rigid schedules or weekly layouts who I'm going to cover. I just choose them as I go. So there is contender Charlie Mckeever, a tough contender, a very capable fighter. Not as deep a resume as someone like Jacob Barfield, who has a losing record in all major categories, but could be a real handful. Charlie Mckeever, a bit like, I try and tell people, excuse me, I try and tell people fighters like Jacob Barfield, Charlie Mckeever, Oscar Gardner, certain other fighters. Soldier Barfield, I'll call him. People don't know what I mean when I say Jacob Barfield. Soldier Barfield, okay, had an immensely big career, an immensely tough career. He fought top-level such a huge number of top-level fighters. Now, in his time, even though he has losing record against champions, Hall of Famers and pounders, he has nearly 50 fights against champions. He's fought piles of fights against Hall of Famers. He has a losing record there, but scores many wins. And many of these fighters, like Mckeever and like Barfield, they were very dangerous opponents, because what you'd find in the time is a lot of people who were bringing up prospects would think, and it happened with Jacob Barfield a number of times, where a promoter would say, oh no, he's not ready for Jacob Barfield yet. We can't put him in with someone like him yet because he'll get a whipping. They were very capable fighters, and they were respected, in the boxing community, but they were not good enough to go on and beat those top level names consistently to become what we'd call now Hall of Famers and all-time greats. But they were very capable, dangerous fighters. Another one is Augie Ratner, Lou Bogash. Names like this are very, very tough fighters, and on the day, very hard fighters to beat. Many a fighter were put in with Jacob Barfield and got beat, and it was a bit of a running joke in his time that they'd say, right, well, Jacob Barfield will be the acid test. If they put this fantastic looking young prospect in with him, if he beats him, he could go places. If he's not ready to go places, Barfield will beat him. That's the kind of reputation a lot of these guys had, and they were very capable fighters, many of them. So there's Charlie Mckeever. Okay, I always love talking about fighters like Clash Royale Pro 698 highlighted there. I love highlighting fighters who never get spoke about. There's going to be many more hundreds of them to come. Okay, and once I've done kind of this period, and we go into any era, then modern guys, old guys will all be mixed up, but pretty much most of them will have full rating information at that point, so the slides will be more full. Potentially I could have designed a format that left that off and included only things that were directly comparable between the both, but that'd be leaving out a lot of information on modern guys, you know, and from the rating era, I'll say, not just modern guys, that I wanted to include. So I just chose on this format, but at least, you know, in this format every fighter's video is exactly the same information. I'll never do a video on him highlighting this, then another video to make a fighter look good highlighting different stats. That's why I do them all the same, so people can compare and contrast directly against any other fighter on my playlist that wish to. But anyway, big shout out to Clash Royale Pro 698. I'm going to get off now. Another video coming tomorrow. I will choose who that is in the morning, but I'm looking to cover a bigger career tomorrow, so I'll look for a fighter who has a deeper career, bigger list of names to fight, and I'll cover a bigger one tomorrow. So I'm the Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.